If you've seen my MCE creation tutorial, you should know how general MCE creation works. In this video, I'm going to show you some advanced methods I've learned that will help you make your MCEs better and get the most out of your Hydra. In this clip of Rise of the Tomb Raider, you can see how whether I slightly tilt the movement stick or push it down all the way, Lara will always be running at full speed. We're going to change it so that slightly tilting the stick will have her walk, and then fully tilting it will have her run. Head into the in-game control screen and check what the walk modifier key binding is. In this case, it's Control. Control is a bad key to use as a walk binding since it combines with other keys on the keyboard to perform Windows functions. So let's change that to K, which isn't used for anything else. Now let's head over to the motion creator. This is my Rise of the Tomb Raider MCE. I'm going to add a binding named Walk. You can check the hidden button here so that it doesn't show up in the controls layout. Now let's add a condition of joystick press direction. In the dialog box, we can specify the left stick since that's our movement stick, and in the direction drop-down box, click any. Now check Custom Dead Zone and add 0.600 to the Dead Zone box. This means that this condition will be dead, or off, for the first 60% of the joystick throw. Now check this handy inverted box to reverse what we just did. Now this condition is only active for the first 60% of the joystick throw. Click OK to add it. For the action, just add the walk modifier key we specified earlier, which is K. Now you can see in-game that I can slightly tilt the stick for walking speed, and when I tilt it all the way, she'll start running as the walk action is let off. This makes the controls feel better, and I usually use this in games that have a walk modifier key. You can use the editor to make some more complex bindings than just simple one condition to one action setups. Remember that the conditions can be multiple entries, and then the action will only be performed once all of them are met. To show how this can be useful, in this example I put crouch and sprint on the same left analog stick clicked in. For crouching, I click it in while the stick is near its neutral spot in the middle. For sprinting, I click it in while it's pressed forward. This saves me space on the Hydra to use for other things. Here's my sprint binding so you can see how it works. The condition has two entries. The first is for the analog stick to be pressed in any direction with a dead zone of 0.800, so that it only activates when it's near the end of the throw. The second is for the actual joystick click in button. Once both of these are met at the same time, my action of the sprint button will execute. Here's my crouch binding. The condition again has two entries. The first is for the joystick to be in the middle of the throw in any direction. The dead zone is 0.500. However, for this one, I've checked the inverted box so it's on while it's below 50% of the stick throw. The second entry is for the click in button of the joystick. Again, once both of these are met at the same time, my action of the crouch button will execute. With them using different live zones of the stick, it avoids accidentally triggering both. Play around with bindings like these to create some interesting control setups. Let me know in the comments if you come up with anything neat. Binding groups are a way to fit more bindings on your Hydra. Take a look at this clip. As you can see, I have 4 different weapons bound to the 4 face buttons of the right controller. These are the 1 through 4 keys on the keyboard. But if I want to select other weapons, I can hold my left trigger down, which will swap out those bindings for another group. While holding the left trigger, if I hit those same face buttons again, I get a different set of weapons. These are the 5 through 8 keys on the keyboard. Now let's learn how to do it. Here is a blank example MCE to start with. First, I'm going to create the default 1 through 4 binding group. It'll be named Group 1, and I'm going to check the enabled box that it's on by default. In this group, I create the bindings for my weapons 1 through 4. Now I make the second group for the 5 through 8 bindings. It'll be named Group 2, and I'm going to keep the enabled box unchecked so that it's off by default. In this group, I create the bindings for my weapons 5 through 8. Now, back in the main, unlabeled binding tree, I have to create the trigger press binding that will switch groups. It will need 2 separate bindings, one for on and one for off. For the on one, I set the trigger press condition to on rise. This will set it so the condition is met only when the trigger is pressed in, not when it's released. For the actions, I have it set to disable Group 1, and another action to enable Group 2. For the off binding, I set the trigger press condition to on fall. This is the opposite, where the condition is only met when the trigger is released, not pressed in. For the actions, I set it to disable Group 2, and another action to enable Group 1. Binding groups are a great way to fit a game with lots of keybinds on the Hydra within the same amount of real estate. There are a lot of things you can do with them. For example, in open world games like GTA, you can use it to swap between on-foot and in-vehicle control schemes. You can even do things like enable binding groups through motion gestures or joystick press directions. Click grids and action grids are 2 powerful tools for wand mode. They turn your screen space into virtual buttons that you can use to execute actions or click on precise areas of the screen. In this example, I have a 3x4 click grid on my screen that is matched up with the 3x4 button layout that you can see down here in the lower left. When I use my click grid button in the different cells of the screen, it'll actually click my mouse pointer on the linked buttons in the lower left. This way, I can click those buttons using my cells without having to actually move my cursor all the way down there. Here's how it looks in the MCE editor. You can see the different cells are the largest squares, and the smaller ones in the corner are where the clicks will actually execute. You can add your own game screenshot in here to make moving and creating your click grid easier. An action grid is similar to a click grid, but instead of executing mouse clicks, it executes key presses. In this example, I have a 3x3 9-cell grid that is linked to the 1 through 9 keys on the keyboard. These are my control groups in-game. Here are some unit control groups. These are on Group 1, these are on Group 5, and these are on Group 9. To select Group 1, I move my cursor to the upper left and hit my action grid button. For Group 5, I do the same in the middle cell. For Group 9, I do the same in the bottom right. You can get pretty fast managing control groups this way. Here's how it looks in the editor. You can see the 9 cells I've made, and clicking each one will show you the key press that's been assigned to them. Click grids and action grids are good tools to have if you plan on playing strategy or other free-floating cursor games, and I recommend learning them. They are a decent substitute for not having a keyboard for control groups or hotkeys. The console is a debugging tool for the motion creator. Click the console button to bring it up. In this feed, you will see in real time everything the motion creator does. It can be really useful for figuring out problems with MCEs, or just to see how things work. Here's an example of the console feed in real time while I'm playing a game. Ratcheting doesn't have to just be on your dedicated ratcheting button. In some cases, it's useful to put it on other buttons in the game. In this example, in Dark Souls 3, I have the ratchet action added to my sprint binding. That way I can hold down sprint to run away from dangers while still ratcheting and looking around. Having full camera control while sprinting is a nice advantage, and you don't have to do any kind of claw grip like you would on the gamepad. Here in Tomb Raider, I put a ratchet action on my jump button. Now I can jump and continue holding the same button to look around, which could help with landing where I want. And that's it for this video. Hopefully this helped with some tips to make your MCs more robust. Thanks for watching.